pull a car over. We giving God glory this morning. Let's go. Hey. Everybody, let me see you move. Put your hands together. Hey, give God praise. Hey. Here we go. Magnify
the Lord with me,
whom the Son He has.
whom the Son He has
so worthy. He's so worthy. My God, I serve an amazing God. He's able to do exceedingly, abundantly, anything I can add or think. I serve an amazing God, y'all. I know you're wondering, like, why we up here this excited? But when you got breath in your body and you can move your arms, you can blink your eyes, I got a reason to give God glory. That's why I will bless the Lord at all times, and His praise will continue to be in my mouth. Because if it had not been for Jesus that was on my side, I don't know where I'll be. I'm so glad I know a God that is able. It's people that's been diagnosed with things and they died from it. It was people that got into accidents and they died from it. It was people that did something wrong but they didn't get exposed. But God, because of God's grace and His mercy covering over all of us, we serve an able God. I'm not perfect, y'all. Nobody up here perfect, but we serve a perfect God who will keep us in perfect peace with our minds stayed on Him. I dare you to give God glory right there. Just think about it for a minute. You might have did something this week, somebody came in your mind that wasn't too godly, but because of His grace and His mercy, we're covered by the blood of Jesus. And for that reason, I can sing about my God being able to do exceedingly and abundantly. Worship God. Worship the Lord. Worship God. Exceedingly, abundantly, above all you could ask or think, according to the power that working God is able to do just what He said He would do. He's gonna fulfill every promise to do. Don't give up on God, 'cause He won't give up on you. He's able. Somebody worship God. Yeah, yeah. He's able. I know. No. Hey, help me sing. God is able. He's gonna fulfill Y'all say, he's able. He's able. Y'all say, let's go. He's able. To do what he said. I serve the God who is the living me. Who got all power in his hand. He's able. He's able. I tried him for myself. He's able. He's able. To do what he said. He's able. He's able. Said he's able. He's able. I'm turning up my table. I know he's able. 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 You're mighty. He's able. You're mighty to heal. You're mighty to deliver. You're mighty to save. You're able. He's able. You're able. He's able. You're able. He's able. He's able. He's able. Yeah. He's able. Say yeah. He's able. Say yeah. Said he's able. Say yeah. Said he's able. Say yeah. He's able. He's able. Whoop, 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 whoop. He's able. He's able. He's able. Don't give up on God. I can't give up on God. When I think about how good God's been, yeah. When I think about how good God is, can I tell you what he is? He's a provider, a way maker, a mind regulator, a heart fixer. He's joy in sorrow, my hope for tomorrow. I gotta read to say he's able. Been that good, been so good. Hey. Don't give up on God. Just think about it, y'all. When you woke up this morning, he didn't give up on you. No, he did. No. Don't give up on God. One more time. Don't give up on God. 'Cause he won't give up on you. Somebody say, yeah. Hallelujah. 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 You get all the glory. You get all the praise. I bless your name, Jesus. You're able, God. You're able, God. So able, so able, so able. So able, so able, so able. Oh God, I give you glory. To God be the glory. To God be the glory. To God. Hallelujah. Hallelujah.
Good evening and welcome to a Father's Heart Conversation. Tonight will be centered around fathers from diverse backgrounds, showcasing the joys, the fears, the traumas, and the fulfillment of fatherhood. Tonight is presented by none other than Apostle Clarence Langston and Pastor Robin Langston. So get ready as we get ready to dive into a conversation of healing, forgiveness, love, growth, and strength and relationship. Tonight is an interactive night, so be sure to comment. Our comment section is a place of community and interactiveness. So please share, stop what you're doing, bring your families in together. Tonight will be life-changing. It's going to be totally amazing. So let's kick off this panel, and I want to introduce some very fine gentlemen, some brothers here, and let's get this show on the road. I want to introduce this panel with my co-host, Alvin Ford. How are you tonight, man?
I'm good. How are you tonight?
I'm doing great. We got some good stuff happening tonight. And if you don't mind, let's introduce some of these fine brothers that we have with us tonight.
Absolutely. I want you to just introduce yourselves. And when you introduce yourself, I want you to tell us just a little bit about if you're a father, how many kids you may have, the type of household you grew up in. We'll just do a brief introduction that way. Let's kick it off with Mike.
I'm Mike Wells, happy father of 5 boys, married to a beautiful lady, been a father for, 28 years? Yeah, 28 years. Love being a father. You know, I was a father at a young age, 21, and, you know, didn't have a father in the home, grew up without a father, and so that was a very interesting time for me because I had no model, I had no example, I had no, you know, nothing to glean from, nothing to model after. I just had to figure it out, you know. But it was fun. It was exciting. It was spending a lot of time with my kids. They were, you know, the mother and I broke up at an early age, and so they were with me the majority of the time. And so we had a ball. We spent a lot of time at parks and playing and movies and stuff like that. So I love being a dad. Yes, it was fun.
Absolutely. Devon, let's hear from you.
And my name is Devon Burnett. I am a father of 1. She is 2.5, my daughter Mila. I've been married it'll be 12 years this year. And, you know, me personally, I grew up without a father. So I didn't have a father in the household. So me, you know, seeing my daughter now, it's a joy for me because I know that my daughter is going to experience what I never got. I never actually had a father in the home. I never had somebody who, you know, was a protector in the home, who was somebody who she could look to, and my daughter can look at me and say, I have a dad. I never had that. So, you know, it's amazing.
Listen, tonight we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about some great stuff, and I'm on the edge of my seat because I know that this panel is going to not only bless us and we're going to understand more things about each other, but it's going to bless the people. A lot of people are in your shoes or my shoes. And literally, share the broadcast. Make sure you're commenting. Make sure you're liking. Tonight will be life-changing. Literally, it's going to blow your socks off. Shoe cam. No socks. But back to it. I heard you guys mention neither one of you grew up without a father.
Nope.
So as we know, it's hard to become what you don't have and what you don't see.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about that. Alvin, we have some questions, and we want to just get right into it. Let's dive in and see what's going on.
Absolutely. So, Devon, you mentioned that you're a new father now. Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
We just want to hear from you. What is it like being a father now for you?
Man, it's amazing. It's scary because, like I said, me growing up in my personal household, I never had a dad. So, you know, I never saw what it was like, you know, to have a father in the house to protect me. I never saw what it was like to have a father reassure me from a male's perspective. It was just my mom. And, you know, I grew up missing that portion, not even realizing until I got older what I was really missing. And, you know, it changed my life once I actually found out what I was missing. But, you know, now when I see Mila, my daughter, you know, it's amazing because she comes to me when she wants something. She comes to me when she wants validity and reassurance. I never had that person to go to. I never had that model and that role model to look at as a father. So when I see my daughter coming to me, it brings a complete joy into my soul and my spirit every single time. She lights up when I come in the house. To see that, it just feels amazing.
Let's talk about that. You mentioned that you not having a father it brought certain uncertainties and I guess lack of confidence.
Yeah, definitely.
Not having that that affirmation from your father.
Absolutely.
How did that affect you growing up? You know, your identity, not being sound in your identity.
I was very timid when I grew up and even into my adulthood because I never really felt like I was sure of who I was. I never felt like I was confident in what I was, what I wanted to be, who I wanted to be. I never felt strong. You know, I always saw what a woman's role was. And my mom, you know, she tried to do the male part, but you can't teach a boy how to be a man if you're a woman. It just don't work. So, you know, growing up, I was very timid. I was always shy. I never had confidence to get in front of people and talk. I never had, you know, that dogmatic attitude to go take over when it came to work or, you know, I was always the one, okay, I'll be the good worker. I don't want to be the leader because I don't want to be the one in the front lines.
Right.
I was never taught how to be in the front. I was always the one that wanted to be in the back because I wasn't sure of myself.
How did this affect your relationships growing up? Let's talk about girlfriends or even your wife now.
Oh, man.
Yeah,
Wow.
how did that play a part in, you know, most people think that, you know, not having a father only affects you as an adolescent, but it spills over into your adulthood.
Oh, yeah, most
you know,
definitely.
and it kind of spills over into your relationships. So let's talk about that. How was that, how were you juggling relationships and even friendships, being that your father wasn't present?
You know, I was one of those guys who always wanted to play video games. I never, even when it came to, you know, relationships, I took them seriously in the fact that I said I was going to be faithful and consistent. But I was, to be honest, man, I was a punk. I'll be honest with you. I didn't know how to really be a stand-up, strong man. So when it came, you know, to, like, if I lost a job, man, I'll be in the corner crying for a minute because I was soft. I didn't know how to come out and just say, oh, I can take the reins, I can take back over. You know, I was one of those guys that'd be, you know, you make the decision, babe. You take the decisions. You
were living passive.
Yeah, I was very passive.
Wow.
Very passive.
Wow.
Man, so it was, you know, when you got a strong woman, it shows you about yourself.
Wow.
And I found out, you know, I was a boy acting like a man. I was just in a man's body, but I was a boy at heart.
That's good. That's good. We're gonna stop right here, Alvin. We heard his story, right? This is a great story, by the way. Just the effects and the traumas of not having a father. Let's talk about that some more. And you have a very similar story. Let's see what's going on over here.
Yeah, Mike, tell us about your story and what it's like being a father for you now.
My story growing up, my mom always told us, she said, God is your father. You know, she told us that God was our father. None of us, my mom raised 8 kids, and 5 boys, 3 girls, and, you know, we were very close-knit. We had Bible study every day at 6 o'clock. We didn't go to church, but we had Bible study every day at 6 o'clock. And so we had to, you know, continuously learn what being a man was, learn what being a father was. I have 4 older brothers, and all of them are fathers. One passed, but all of them are fathers. And, you know, growing up was, I was very different. I was a very different kid. I was fearless. I was very just, you know, climbing trees and, you know, doing all kind of boy stuff. But I had no model or example of what a man was supposed to be like. And so when I became 21 and now I'm a father, I was excited. I was really excited because I made a commitment to my son that I would never leave him, no matter what.
Wow.
I mean, I was dogmatic about that. And I went through literal hell with his mother at the time because we were both young. She didn't want kids. I did. And so she kind of had this attitude like, well, you wanted them, go ahead. And so I did. And we, you know, I raised my boys, you know, no disrespect or discredit to her. She's a great mother. We have a good relationship. You know, the boys love her. They're close, all of that. But growing up, it was me and the boys a lot. You know, she did her job, she did her role, but it was
I remember those years. I kind of grew up. Those of you don't know, I grew up with your son, Junior, Michael, and we were pals. We were road dogs at one point. Yeah. And similar story. I was with my dad. He was with his dad, and you always had your boys with you. Yep. And I remember times we were complaining about our dads, like, "Yo, our dads are too hard. They're too stern. They're too strict." Yeah. We was like, you had this van, and we'd be in the van just like bashing our dads, like, "Man, this ain't right." Like, Our daddies is tripping right now.
Yeah.
I want to talk about that. You know,
Sure.
you mentioned that you didn't have your natural dad in the home, and so you really didn't have a manual
No, none at all.
to real fatherhood. So you were just doing what you.
I was in survival mode. I was straight, just off the cuff, learning. I was trying to make sure they didn't make the mistakes I made. But in that, I was making a lot of mistakes.
Wow.
I'm trying to protect them from the world, but I was messing them up myself as well.
Wow.
Just if I can just be honest and transparent, you
No,
know,
definitely.
and I had no clue because everybody in the world was telling me bragging and celebrating me like you can't even imagine. I mean, I walked them to school every day. The school was 2 blocks away. I picked them up. I went on every school special, every field trip. I was self-employed, so anytime they needed me for whatever, I was there. So to the world's eyes,
You were the bomb daddy.
oh man. And it wasn't until I met Apostle
Right.
that I started to learn how messed up and jacked up I really was.
So what you're saying is fatherhood from the outside, you knew what to do
Yeah.
as far as being present.
Yes, and
But-
protective and all of that.
Yeah, you had that down pat.
Yes.
But it was more than that.
Way more. Way
We're
more.
gonna talk about that too, real quick. If you're tuning in right now, I want you to share the broadcast. I believe that this conversation, this panel, is going to be a blessing to someone out there watching. This may not be your story, but we're going to talk about topics that you may have struggled with, your sons may have struggled with, you may know people. I challenge you right now to dive into the comments and begin to tag certain people, even text them, call them on the phone. They can watch the broadcast right now. Send them the link right now. This is going to be a blessing, not just to us, but to all the fathers, the sons, and even the fatherless sons out there, even in the daughters. We may be all men up here, but this conversation is for everyone. So, Mike,
Yes, sir.
you talked about what you thought was right. You were doing the right thing, but slowly you were somewhat destroying your sons.
Yes.
Right?
Breaking them.
Breaking your sons.
Yes.
That's the thing.
Yes.
Because most people think because I have my dad around, he's taking me to the baseball games, he's taking me on field trips, he's protecting me, but there was something else that I needed, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's almost like you could say there's a difficulty of being something you haven't seen.
Absolutely.
And can you talk about that? What was the difficulty, and Devon too, if you could tap into that, the difficulty of being something that you did not see?
It was extremely hard because you know, like we said, you had no example. You had no idea of what that was supposed to be. All you knew was what you thought was what a father was supposed to be, and so you did that. And it wasn't until, one thing that I've learned is that hurt people hurt people.
Yeah.
And being hurt, as a child through different things I went through, I was very guarded. It wasn't until just recently that the Holy Spirit brought back to my remembrance that my grandmother was murdered, viciously murdered when I was 7. And I remember that day like it was yesterday. My mom came home, she was crying, she was broken. My uncle was murdered too the same time. And so both of them were murdered, and that impacted our whole household.
Wow.
She was shot in the back of the head. And so I never growing up allowed people to stand behind me. I always kept my back to the wall. I ended up getting into security, bodyguarding, and traveling the world and all of that because of fear. I became
That trauma.
That trauma,
It stayed
man.
with you.
Yeah, it stayed with me. It shaped me. It molded me. It made me into this very, very extremely protective person, and I don't talk about that much
So
at all. But
you never had anybody till later in life to identify that trauma
no.
that ultimately molded you into the way you are now.
Exactly. No one ever, I didn't even know it. Sometimes you go through things, the majority of us men, we go through things, we just kind of throw it in the back, we keep pressing on, we keep pushing.
I think a lot of times we're because the status quo of a man, we're told to keep it pushing.
Yep.
We're not supposed to feel.
Absolutely.
Nothing. We're not supposed to feel anything.
Yeah.
And that's the most toxic thing
Oh
I
my
think
God, yes.
that we could possibly do as men.
Yes.
Is to hold stuff in and not deal with it. And that's why I'm so glad that we're turning on the lights on these topics and really talking about it.
Absolutely. And as we're talking about it, Devon, I want you to talk to us about a father's love, right? So you didn't necessarily experience a father's love, but now that you have a daughter, you're giving a father's love. So can you talk to us about what that looks like for you today?
Man, it's, for me, I'm very thankful because growing up, I didn't have my dad. And when I found out the backstory of my father, because I never met him, I found out he died when I was about to go into my senior year of high school. I didn't want to go to the funeral. I didn't want to deal with it. And, you know, years later, I found out when I was about 32 or 33, I actually met my dad's side of the family. And I found out that my father was a drug addict. I found out that my father was a womanizer. I found out that my father was, you know, he lived a very free, horrible, rambunctious life. He didn't have any type of regard for his family. He had a son that he wasn't a father to. His son, who was actually my half-brother, ended up getting murdered. And, you know, just knowing my dad's backstory, I'm thankful in a sense that God actually kept me from that, because when I got to Word in Action, I was able to meet a man who is a true father. And it showed me how to actually start loving the proper way. I didn't experience the love that I would have got from my father, but thank God I did receive it, because the love that he might have gave me might have messed up my daughter, because I would have never knew how to raise her properly. Now, you know, I know how to pour into my daughter spiritual things, natural things. I know how to take time out to kiss my daughter, hug my daughter, love on my daughter, reassure her everything is okay. When she skinned her knee the first time, I was able to put the Band-Aid on and kiss it. I actually get to experience the love that she sees in me, because I've actually now experienced that, even though I didn't experience it growing up.
Wow.
Wow, that's very powerful. And I want to hear from you. I think a lot of times we don't necessarily talk about the sacrifices that fathers make. So you are a father and you have children, and you've shown them the love that maybe you did not receive. And along with that love, there were sacrifices that you made. Let's talk about the sacrifices that fathers make.
Yeah, that's a great question, and that list of sacrifices that fathers make is probably, you know, could wrap around the world 20 times, because we're the head, and we have to a lot of times put our dreams, our aspirations, our goals, our ideas, our wants, our desires on hold for the betterment of the family. You know, sometimes I've had many opportunities to leave the state of Michigan when my boys were little and go off and be some celebrity's personal bodyguard, but I would have been on the road for the whole year. I refused those assignments because I was a father. I wasn't going to leave. So there's a lot of sacrifices, you know, especially being a black father. In our community, there's the sacrifice of the pressure that you're constantly under, right? There's a sacrifice of, you know, the things you want to do that you don't have the finances or resources to do. There's a sacrifice of not being able to, you know, experience some of the things that, praise God, I can do now with my children. I can take them on vacations. I can, you know, splurge and do different things. But
Talk about that.
Yes.
That's one of the things that's very prevalent in our culture right now as fathers, the not being able to provide as a father.
Yeah.
And feeling that somewhat of a not being enough to your kids. And it's a real thing. It's almost, we see a lot of depression in fathers because, and even incarceration, compromising their freedom because they feel as though they have to live up to this standard that the world has, or this thing that we believed that we have to somewhat accomplish. Like going through that, and what kept you in the game and kept you focused and just kind of having, what was your mind like knowing that this is just a process and I'm gonna get through this, and you know there's light at the end of the tunnel for me here?
Just love, you know, my love for my children, the love God had for me, the love that Apostle has shown me down through the years, you know, continues to give me the strength to keep going. Even before I met him, it was just, you know, looking at my boys, knowing that the promise I made them, I promised that I wouldn't leave them. I promised that no matter what me and their mom went through, no matter what I went through, I mean, there was times when we really struggled, you know, pillow to post, moving here, moving there,
Wow.
you know, not enough money, driving hoopties. I mean, I was a single self-employed man, and I didn't have the means that I have now, you know, and so
Going through those struggles, I've never seen you without your boys.
No, never. I mean, I had them with me all the time, no matter what. Even when I was dating, if I found a young lady that was, you know, that I could trust and I thought could potentially be my wife or girlfriend at the time. I even took my boys on dates. The dates even centered around them. If the girl didn't, it was a package deal. A
Gotta
lot of
take
single
me.
mothers is like, yeah, hey, you know what I'm saying? That's like, that's why I have a lot of respect for single moms because, if they have children and their children come with the package, you can't just
Right.
kick the kid to the side.
I love what you said. You mentioned Apostle, and those who don't know, Apostle is he's all of our spiritual fathers.
Yes.
And God just knows how to orchestrate our lives,
Absolutely.
And it's like he gives us things that we need when we don't know we need them. And it doesn't always come in a form that we expect it.
Yes.
For you would have thought your natural father would have stepped up to the plate. Your natural father would have stepped to the plate, but you're somewhat happy he didn't because you didn't want to inherit
Exactly.
those curses and the legacy that he left you.
Exactly.
So he gives us people like Apostle Clarence Langston. He gives us coaches, and it's being a father now. It's hard. It's a hard thing to do.
Yes.
To go outside your home and to cultivate someone else as a son. When you see them lacking somewhere, and you say, "Come on, I'm gonna bring you in. I'm gonna help you." You know what I'm saying? I look at Apostle and I'm like, man, the older I get, the more I realize like how special he really is. Like
Yes.
I have two children of my own, and I can't imagine being able to balance this, my home life and my marriage life, and take on someone else's trauma
Yeah.
that they had before I even met them.
Yeah.
And you gotta love them back to life. You gotta see the little boy in them, the hurt, frail, insecure little boy, and you gotta just love them back to life and teach them and raise them and cultivate them and groom them. That's so honorable.
Them and their children.
Right. That's
Yeah.
he did it for my dad.
Yeah.
It's such an honorable thing to do. So I just wanna. I know we're off topic, but we have to honor Apostle
Absolutely.
in this moment on
Wouldn't be
Father's
here
Day.
without him.
Like he
Yes.
is truly
Wouldn't be here without them.
a man's man, and we salute him on tonight. So, yeah.
Absolutely. And continuing that same topic of talking about the sacrifices, right? Talking about the sacrifices that you have seen in others or sacrifices that you've had, Devon. I want you to talk about what that looks like to you.
Man, for me, seeing the sacrifice that Apostle made for just me specifically and my family, when me and my wife came to the ministry, we didn't even want to be together. We were on the verge of divorce. Then when we decided we wanted to stay together, we didn't want to have children. Then we decided that we wanted to have children. And we went through 2 miscarriages under, their tutelage. They were able to speak to us and pull us through that because they experienced it. I think about, the fact that God let Apostle Clarence Langston go through everything that he had to go through in his life for me, for Leroy, for you, Alvin, for Mike, and for every single one of us that's connected to him. Everything that we could possibly think of that we've had to go through as a collective group, he had to go through it individually.
Gave us a cheat code.
That's right. Sure
He
did.
was able to pull me and my wife through those moments. And then when it was time for us to actually have a child, I now know how to be a father. If I had never had that model, if I had never had somebody just teach me, show me, he allowed me to undergird his children during Sunday and Tuesday services just to, one, reignite the desire to have children, and then to learn little things, taking them to the bathroom, how to change clothes on a child who does not want their clothes changed, how to feed a child who does not want to eat. I learned all those things because he allowed me to be in his family's presence. So, to see that sacrifice that he makes every Sunday and Tuesday, but then we all get to glean from that, to grow from that, and be able to impart that into our children, we can never pay for that, man.
That's the thing about fatherhood. Like, to me, and we said this earlier, fatherhood is one of the most vital but undermined roles ever, because you have someone like Apostle who made this great impact in all of our lives. So you're telling me it takes, you can't tell me that fatherhood isn't important. You know what I'm saying? Like, how do you change the trajectory of generations? Devon has a daughter now he can impart in and teach her the love of a father. You lost your dad a few years back.
Yes.
I want to talk about that if you don't mind. But before you lost your dad, you know, you were a member at the church, and Apostle was your spiritual father.
Yes.
So he was able to prep you and groom you and bring you in to prepare you for life. You know, life happens, and if you try to do this thing alone sometimes, man,
Eat you up.
it'll destroy you, it'll eat you up.
Absolutely.
So,
Surely will.
Alvin, if you don't mind, I want to talk about, you know, your relationship with your dad and how were you able to balance having multiple father figures in your life without, in a sense, compromising. I know sometimes it gets weird. You know, it got weird for me a little bit growing up. I had a natural dad and my spiritual father. You know, balancing both of those two men in your life and understanding where you fit and not trying to step on this person's toes. And, you know, as you get older and mature, like, it all comes together. But let's talk about that and how the passing of your dad affected your life and where you are emotionally right now.
Absolutely. So I would say for me, my story is a little different as far as my dad was in the household growing up, and he was a great example, and I saw the sacrifices and things he made. Although at that time I didn't understand, it just seemed like, you know, that was what a father does. And I think sometimes having that, you can take that for granted because you see things operating and you don't necessarily know as a kid how those things are happening.
That's
You
good.
just see it happening. And you just feel like, oh, this is how life is supposed to be until you get older and you realize, wow, my dad really made sacrifices
Wow.
that, you know, I could not even comprehend at that moment in time, you know. And it's like seeing that and having that type of father and then losing him at a younger age. He died at the age of 46.
Wow.
Seeing that and losing him, I talked to God and I said, man, like, I lost my father, and there's so much I still feel like I have to learn. You know, like,
Wow.
how am I going to learn? Like, I'm not married yet. I still have questions. There's things I
Wow.
want to know, you know. How am I going to get these questions answered? And it was so crazy because it was almost like God did it like a relay race.
So at the break of manhood almost, from
Yeah.
adolescent to manhood,
Yeah.
you're in your chapter, your next chapter, to where you got the most questions. All right, this is where I need my dad
Absolutely.
for real in my life. That was taken from you.
Yes.
Let's talk about that.
So at that moment, as I was saying, you know, I'm asking God, like, what am I going to do at this point? You
Yeah.
know, like, how do I learn this? Because there was no one else, although I had, like, grandparents and things like that, I didn't have necessarily a father figure.
That
at
impression.
Time, exactly. But around that time, I was connected to Apostle Clarence Langston. And it was almost like God did it like a relay race.
Yeah.
So the connection happened while I was still running with my dad. He connected me to Apostle.
He did
and
this.
then the baton was handed. And so when the baton was handed, I realized and recognized that God had, in a way, given me another father. And through that, I've been blessed to be able to get those questions answered that I have and see that example needed to where he's been just as great as my natural father, and he's a spiritual father. So God has really blessed me in that way.
Listen, God is the ultimate author. We can't make this stuff up. This is real time. This is real issues. I know you can find yourself in all four of these gentlemen right here. So I need you to do me a huge favor. We're going to be right back. But listen, text somebody, grab your phones, call somebody up, tell them to log in, tap in, join the broadcast. We're going to be right back. We got to pay some bills. Here's a few commercials for you guys. So see you right back. Don't move.
ready to have your faith unleashed? Apostle Clarence Langston teaches the true meaning of faith. Equips you with the necessary tools that will activate your faith and imparts God's never-ending love in his new book, Faith Unleashed. Order it now. Go to ClarenceLangston.com and purchase your copy of Faith Unleashed today. You can have an unstoppable life when your faith is unleashed. Order now.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. I pray and I hope that you enjoyed our first segment. Just doing a little quick recap. We're talking about tonight a father's heart conversation. Tonight is going to be amazing. I said it before, I'll say it again. It's going to be so good, it's going to blow your socks off. Shoe cam. No socks. Anyway, listen, we're so excited. We're switched it up a little bit. We have a different guest with us here tonight. We're going to talk about that some more, and we're going to get more in depth about just the role of a father, what it is to be a father, and how fatherhood has changed us. So we're going to get straight to it. And listen, giving honor to Apostle and Pastor Robin Langston for giving us this platform and allowing us to really just share and really have this type of dialogue. We want to give honor to them for just making this happen and creating a space just for men to talk. I think men don't do enough talking. We don't do enough sharing. And I think the last time I sat with some guys, I was watching Mayweather knock out Logan Paul on a boxing ring. And if it's not that, we're watching basketball. We're talking about the playoffs. Let's go Suns. So we're going to get to it. We're going to talk about it. I'm here again with my host, Alvin Ford. And I'm also here with Damon Ford. Mr. Damon.
Yes, sir.
How are you doing, man? Let's talk about that combination you got on first, man. You dressed to impress tonight.
Yeah, he banging. That's it.
Thank you, sir.
So let's get into some of these questions. Alvin, if you want to kick us off, let's get this show on the road.
Absolutely. So, as you mentioned, we have someone new with us tonight, Damon Ford. We want to talk to you and just get your experience of what it was like for you and your relationship with your father, and then you can give us a little background about what it's like for you now being a father.
Yes, sir. First, my father, rest his soul, he passed a couple years ago. He was a great man. I loved my father. It was a different relationship because he wasn't in the house, the whole time. My mom and my father got divorced when I was around 6, 7 years old. I was young, and I was the youngest of 3 boys. And I remember my dad was a military dad. So I remember he took us to this little restaurant and let us know that my mom and him were gonna part ways.
At 6 years old?
Yeah, it was a little bit older, I think. I can't remember exactly, but I know around 6 or 7, around there. But I might have been like 7.
Okay.
I might have been 8. I don't know. That's the whole. I probably block it out, but I know I was young. I was the youngest of 3 boys. I want to say we had just moved, so I know I didn't start school until we had moved into our new house, and then I was there for like a year, and that's when I know my dad was, parting ways. So I think I was 6, but don't quote me on that.
If you don't mind elaborating on that moment, did you exactly know what was going on when your father told you that, him and mom is
I did enough. I remember me and my brothers kind of looked like, when my dad might have turned away. I remember us giving eye contact like, yes. My dad was hard. He was strict. He was real strict. He, being, that military background, really clean person. He used to rearrange the furniture every week. I remember little things like that, and when I think back as I got older, why he might have been like that, I know that military was probably part of it. And I know that him being like that, I know some of that stuff is in me. I see it.
So the things that you didn't like, you picked
the
up
things
some
that
of
I
those
said,
characteristics.
I'm never going to be like that. Like my wife would point out to me all the time, like, you're like this with the children or whatever, and I'm like, dang, where did that come? I know where it came from,
right.
But I'm like, I thought I was, a little more conscious about not being like that. But,
Isn't it crazy? Like some things we subconsciously tell ourselves, but it's just already in the DNA.
Right, correct.
And I just think it's so
Just,
powerful.
yeah, that experience, and just like everybody was talking about before about the exposure or the lack thereof, having a man, modeling it. When you're young, I don't really. I was telling them earlier, I don't remember thinking like that. Like, who's a strong man or a positive role model for a man? I never went through my mind. Even when I got older, 18, 19, 20. It was just, I don't know. I don't know if it was just a different, or if I was different, or if it was just a different environment. They talk about, the nature version. I don't know what it was, but I never thought like that. Like I was looking for a man to model myself after.
So it sounds like your story is a little bit different. So you were somewhat relieved that your dad was stepping away because you wanted to get away from that.
Absolutely. I remember just the walking on eggshells.
Yeah.
My dad worked nights. He was a police officer. So, you talking about little kids who can't make noise in the house.
So you were feeling restricted.
Because Dad had to sleep before he went to work. It was kind of like, that was hard. It was always walking on eggshells.
Wow.
Always, It was, so I remember when he told us that my mom and him were parting ways, and I remember we were like, kind of like, okay, I don't, no one was sad, like,
Wow.
or even knew to act sad.
Yeah.
I remember, I believe, if I put myself in his shoes, I believe my dad wanted to have us understand. So he got what he wanted, because we were all like, okay, yeah, no one was sad or, Dad, you mom, you know what I'm saying? It was nothing like that at all. Everybody was cool. And I didn't even realize that I even had a problem with it until later on in life, indirectly. I realized that certain things would touch me, certain movies, and they always had to do with a father and a son. And I put it together like,
At what? So Father's Day, or when you see those moments where a father is bonding with his son, growing up, that never penetrated or pierced your thought to say, hey, where's my dad in all of this?
Never did I look at anybody else's situation. Maybe because most of my friends didn't have fathers there either. So, you know what I'm saying? It was kind of like a shared, and no one talked about it. No one thought, like, I never looked at somebody and like, wow, their father's there and mine isn't. I remember one time that I did have a real disdain for my father, the way he did my older brother at one point in time.
Yeah.
My brother was adopted. They told my mom she couldn't have children, another story, but he was adopted, and he rebelled and stuff. He knew he was adopted, so he, when he was a young teenager, he would always get kicked out of school and stuff, but he went to stay with my dad, and he went from getting kicked out of school all the time, flunking out of school, alternative ed all the time, to all of a sudden, honor rolls, starting on varsity basketball as a freshman. And then my dad decided he was going to get married again. Him and the woman didn't get along. My dad put my brother out.
Wow.
And that didn't sit right.
Absolutely.
It didn't sit right.
And we know that being a father is very difficult, right?
Yeah.
Being a father can be difficult. So I want to ask you guys, when thinking about your journey of being a father, what was the difficulty behind it, and what are some things that you did to overcome that?
Overcoming it was a daily thing, almost unconscious, because, you don't even know you're overcoming something that you don't even know that you missed, right? Yeah. So you're just kind of surviving. You're just kind of figuring it out. Our generation, like majority of us, none of us had fathers. So we weren't missing something that we really should have had. We weren't missing something that was very instrumental, should have been very instrumental in our lives. My dad and mom divorced when I was 2. My dad was a great provider, a great father, man of God as well, had a lot of spiritual gifts and things, but he wasn't there. He lived in Chicago. And so I've only seen, well, he passed, but, and my dad married 3 times, had 10 kids, and I was the only one that made it to the funeral. I was the only one that took time out to go and bury him. None of my other siblings went. Not judging them, they have had their own different relationships with him, but something in me still always loved my dad, always honored my dad, and desired him, but I didn't miss him because I didn't know what having a father was like.
Right.
It was something that was in the back of my mind, but my mom constantly kept it in our face that God is your father, God is your father, God is your father. And so for me, I just went with it. And overcoming it was just more, it was more of a focus to make sure I was not, I was determined to not be the example of a broken back black family. That was my thing. When 21 years old, I looked myself in the mirror and I promised my child at the time and myself that I would never leave, no matter what.
Absolutely. And at one point, you were a single father, right?
Yes.
What words of advice would you give or encouragement would you give to someone that is a single father now, being that you've traveled that road, and what advice would you give them to help them on their journey?
No matter what, never give up and know that the child did not ask to be here. They're here. They're yours. They're your responsibility. They're God's child. But he's entrusted you to raise them up for a season. And, there's going to be many tests. There's going to be many trials. There's going to be many heartaches and pains that come along with that job, because it's a big job. But you are equipped to do it because we are leaders. We are men, we are fathers, and we have certain DNA from our heavenly Father. And if you have a spiritual father, I would encourage you to, really hold on to him, ask those questions, really get close to him, and really model after him if he's a good spiritual father. We, like Leroy said, we're all blessed to have the same spiritual father, and so we have that personal connection. We have that model. We have that example. Any brother that does not have that, I would just encourage him to try to find it.
Definitely.
Because it's
fathers
important.
come in many shapes and forms.
Yeah, absolutely.
It doesn't necessarily have to be through DNA.
No.
It could be a coach.
Yes.
It could be a mentor.
Yes.
It doesn't necessarily have to be your father or the title of a father. So just to encourage anyone out there who may be struggling with, say, hey, I don't have a father, and like you said, God is our ultimate father, but don't reject it. Don't reject help. Don't reject guidance. Don't reject a father's love. And for me, I remember me being a father now. I remember, like you said, you find yourself doing things that your father did. And on my way here, literally, I was on my way here, and this was a father moment. And I remember my natural dad and my spiritual dad teaching me this lesson. But being so young, I said, they don't know what they're talking about. I got this all under control. Like,
Right.
They just hate, and they don't know my time. This is a different culture. Times change.
Right.
I'm driving this car, and, man, this guy's racing, literally. And it's an older guy. We racing to get here. We just racing, going in and out of traffic, and I'm beating him. And, man, I'm going super fast because I had the ability to go fast. We get to a stoplight, and he's right on the side of me. And I'm like, yo, I did all this maneuvering, all this speeding in and out, and this guy, all that for him to end up right on the side of me. And God literally told me, like, just because you have the ability to go fast does not grant you the ability of direction, right? That's what fathers are for. This gentleman behind me, he probably traveled this road 100 more times than I did. He timed the lights right. He know where the speed traps are. He know where the potholes are. He know how to maneuver. He ultimately had more experience than I did. So just because I had the tenacity and I had the go get him and just the gun ho, this guy had more experience driving than I did. So ultimately, we ended up in the same position, and he ended up passing me. So I'm like, yo, and God told me right there, he said, this is the role of a father, is vital at this age. And I'm just super thankful for that voice telling me, like, go with your father. He's going to teach you and raise you how you need to be raised, along with my spiritual father.
Absolutely. And we touched on a little bit of the difficulties, but we know that it's not all difficult being a father.
Right.
There's some joys with it. There's some great things that make it all worth it. So, Damon, can you just tell us a little bit about what are some things that makes it all worth it for you?
Just the smiling faces, the hope of avoidance, that my children avoid all the obstacles and the hurdles, the potholes that I hit, to know that they're getting more. And what I was going to say earlier that I didn't about Apostle, what he taught me when I was saying how I was different. I didn't look at some things.
Right.
Apostle, his teaching, he teaches us all about be intentional, be on purpose.
Right.
You know, he said don't let your success be an accident, let alone your failure.
Wow.
But don't let, but being intentional. So I try to be intentional how I raise my children, and knowing that, it's one day it's going,
Right.
they'll be in my position. Back when I was young like them, you know how it was day by day. It was like you can't really see the future, even though your parents, I'm preparing you for this. Went in one ear and out the other.
We don't see it at that moment. I'm telling you, we don't see it.
So I see in them, I see some things in their behavior, their mannerisms that are similar to myself, but I see the choices they make. I see their pureness and their genuineness being just that.
That's good.
Being real. And so that
good.
brings a joy to me. And
I want to shift gears real quick. I want to talk about blended families. This is something that's very prevalent in our community, in our culture. I don't think we talk about it enough, honestly, and how that works, what that looks like. When I say blended families, talking about people who may have got remarried, you got remarried, or children before marriage or after marriage, or from a different person, having multiple, I don't want to say baby mamas, but what is it called? Mothers. Let's talk about that. You have a blended family. How was that transition as a father without compromising, your relationship with your children, bringing another person into that?
To the household, it was amazing. The blending part with the kids was great because they are like bosom buddies. I have an 18-year-old and one that's about to be 18 in 2 months, and so those two are two peas in a pod. And then we have a 13-year-old, my wife's 13-year-old, our 13-year-old. It was a little different for me because I have boys already. I wanted someone with daughters, if I can just be honest.
Right.
But the joy was knowing that now I get to do it again, and I get to, shield them or protect them, but it's a lot of teaching because now as a blended family, you have 2 new children that you have to learn, and they're all different. They're each different. They're both different, and so it was a learning curve. It takes a lot of patience. It takes a lot of understanding. It takes a lot of discipline to check yourself because you can't assume they know something you haven't put in them. You understand? I'm taking on 2 boys at a very young age, and I had to be patient enough to know and remind myself they don't know you.
Wow.
They don't know what your natural sons already know. So I had to be patient. Then you have the other parents, and you have to learn to deal with them, and that can be a trip.
What was the hardest part, gaining the children's trust or the father of the children's trust?
The children were easy. The children were easy. The father, that's still a learning.
Let's
curve.
talk about that real quick. It's still a battle for you, or it's still a fight, or is this okay?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
It is because that man had to learn and trust that I'm the husband now, and I'm going to protect your children, no matter what, like they're my own.
Right.
But the experiences he had with my wife were his experiences, but this is a whole new season and chapter we're in now. And so I had to I still have to respect him as a man, respect him as their father, but also remind him that that's my wife at times. And so there's some times where things have gotten a little tense.
Yeah.
And I just respectfully have to remind him, bring him back to reality, check myself to keep myself from going places that I shouldn't go.
Right.
And doing things that God wouldn't be pleased of.
That's real.
If I'm just being real.
No.
So being blended family ain't easy. it's not easy because you have to constantly remind yourself these children are God's. He should trusted you to protect them, to raise them up to be better than maybe what the circumstances have given them.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. That's really good. Now, Damon, you have a child from a different mother.
Yes.
Let's talk about that. What was your experience like with that, and then and currently?
It's that my daughter, she's just as much of my daughter as my other children, but she doesn't live with me, all the time. Like, my wife and our family, my 3 other children. So I find that to be my biggest challenge because
That separation?
yeah, because raising a child, being a father, you want to be genuine in the act, and you don't want it to be a show. You don't want to put on a show.
Right.
But it's not easy. It's hard. It's hard. It's a challenge
To this day.
to this day.
Yeah.
She's 10 years old now, and it's it's a challenge. It's definitely a challenge. Just to be the loving father that you want to be.
Yeah.
Like I could easily act it out and be, but I try not to act, and so sometimes I find myself, my oldest daughter, she'll tell me, like, Daddy, that was kind of weird, and I'm like, baby, I'm trying. This is not easy. Like, it's a challenge. It's a challenge. I don't want her to feel any less.
Right.
But it's not the same. It's her not being
Right.
physically there. It's different. It's a challenge.
I think a lot of men face that challenge. You're not alone in that, and
Absolutely.
it's important to talk about like you said, the burden of fatherhood. Like they don't all. It's not always glitz and glamour, and we have emotions, we have feelings, and being able not to be there, like you said, not only to it's bigger than just providing. It's bigger than just financing, putting clothes and buying shoes. But when you're literally, your heart is tied to your child, and you feel like, man, I'm not there the way I want to be there. It can be very discouraging. So, Damon, if you could, in any kind of way, if you can find some type of encouragement to someone that may be out there who may be struggling the same fight that you're fighting, and knowing that this fight is not unto death, but God somehow will orchestrate this back together. If you can just give some encouragement to somebody out there right now to just keep fighting and keep pressing.
Yeah, absolutely. Never give up on the fight for your children, let alone, yourself. I try to fight for myself as much as I do for her, because, when you're in a fight, as a young man, sometimes the easy thing was to bow out, and that's one thing that our spiritual father, he
Ain't no quitter.
yeah, he ain't no quitter. He's consistent with it. So, I try to look at that model. So just like what Leroy said about having role models, and or about, I don't know where my mind went there, but just stick with it, and be a praying man. I mean, that always helps. I haven't figured it all out yet, so I just say
And
stick with it.
that's what I love. I think guys, we think, especially men, we think we have to have everything mapped out. We have to know our next destination is. It sounds good. It sounds ideal, but it's not reality.
It was meant to be reality, but it wasn't it was meant to be reality, but it's not our actuality.
Exactly.
At all.
And I think the generations of it's a generational thing. Like the fathers before us, was supposed to guide us and grab us by our hands, like, hey, I know what you're going through.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? Come here. I know what you're going through. Mike, come
Walk
here.
us out of it.
At some point, it got cut off.
Yes.
Right? And thankful we were able to intercept that with our spiritual father.
For those of you all that are joining us tonight, we're talking about a father's heart. We've been having some great discussion and
Yes.
dialogue with these men that have been just giving their experiences, giving the keys and dropping some gems from their own personal journeys. And so next, we're going to go to the next segment, dealing with forgiveness. Stay tuned and keep us with you tonight.
Word in Action Christian Center International is officially open every other Sunday of the month. Word in Action family, we are so excited to see you on our campus. We are taking all of the necessary precautions to make sure that you and your family are in a sanitized, safe, and socially distant environment. For more information, please call 313-864-5300.
I love Clarence Langston Ministries because it's a place where a kid can have fun, feel the love of God, and be themselves.
It's a place where teenagers can be prepared for the future.
I love Clarence Langston Ministries because you can come in heavy and depressed and anxious and leave out free.
I love Clarence Langston Ministries because it's a place where families can be made whole.
Encouragement, insight, instructions, inspiration, and above all else, the love of God.
No matter the sickness, no matter the doctor's report, this is a place of signs, wonders, and miracles.
I love Clarence Langston Ministries because we are being taught the Word of God and how to go out into our schools, our neighborhoods, and out with our friends to share the love of Christ. We are not afraid to be different, to be a light, and impact the world.
We love Clarence Langston Ministries, and so will you. Connect with us today.
Welcome back to tonight's conversation on A Father's Heart. We've had some amazing discussion with some powerful men that have given their testimonies, their stories, their experiences of what it's been like being a father, their relationships with their fathers, and we want to continue that conversation tonight. We're talking about forgiveness and what it is to have a spiritual father. I'm your co-host, Alvin Ford.
And I'm Leroy Singleton, and it's a great place. We're in a great place tonight, man. This is have you guys been enjoying yourselves tonight?
Yes, indeed.
This has
powerful.
really been some great dialogue. Really just turning on the lights to a lot of conversations that don't necessarily get talked about as much in our culture. So we're going to further this dialogue, further this conversation. I'm super excited, man, and we got some great content, some new guests here. So we can introduce our newest guest,
Garrett.
Hey, Leroy. It's good to be here with all my brothers as we all come together talking about Father's Day. You know, we all brothers because we got the same father. You know, God gave us Apostle Langston to raise us in God. And, you know, it's just, I never had siblings. I was the only child. So when I got born again, now I got all these brothers. So I'm really happy to be here with you all.
No, we're so glad to have you. Listen, this is just not just Garrett. He's our attorney too, you know what I'm saying? So,
absolutely.
You know, he represents us legally. So if y'all ever want to press charges or something, just go through him. Just playing. Right.
But Gary, we want you to talk a little bit more. Like, do you have any kids?
Yes.
Okay,
yep.
tell us about it.
Yeah, so I have a daughter. Her name is Zoe, and she's 1 year old, and she is amazing. And I never imagined, I know, Leroy, you got a daughter. Her name rhymes with my daughter's name.
Chloe.
And I never imagined having a daughter would be this great. It just, I always wanted a boy. Let my first child be a boy. And then as soon as I had a daughter, I was like, oh my God, this is great. Like, it's just, they do something to you having a daughter.
Absolutely. And for those that are tuning in and you're just joining us, what was your relationship like with your father, and just letting the people know your experience or what that was like for you growing up?
Well, I felt like I had a good relationship with my father growing up. And, you know, unfortunately, that relationship came to an early end. You know, he passed away when I was only 8 years old. And that was, for most of my adolescence, one of the most, like, horrible events in my whole life. I mean, it just messed me up. But looking back,